Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, a landmark civil suit between the family of terror victim Yehuda Guetta and the suspected terrorist killer who shot him. Meanwhile, the coronavirus cabinet in Israel releasing new regulations and restrictions overnight. Popular Israeli activist Rudy Ruckman detained in Nigeria. And the Israeli Antiquities Authority in Jerusalem unveiling a monumental new discovery. Beginning north of Jerusalem at the Kalandia checkpoint in the West Bank, an Israeli guard lightly wounded in a drive-by shooting Wednesday morning. The attacker then fleeing towards Jerusalem and abandoning his car before finally being found hiding nearby. Border police finding a pistol in the car and detaining the suspect, later identified as a 36-year-old from the nearby Kfar Akab. The Kalandia checkpoint, situated between Jerusalem and Ramallah, has seen numerous terror-related incidents over the years, including just a few weeks ago when a Palestinian woman was shot dead mid-attack. Speaking of suspected terror attacks, United States lawmakers meeting with Palestinian Authority President Abbas in Ramallah, and they're expressing sharp disapproval over the PA's so-called pay-for-slay stipends, monthly salaries used to reward and incentivize violence against Israelis. Abbas, for his part, however, maintaining that the martyrs' funds are a necessary form of welfare. This even after failing to come up with a response when pressed by the American delegation. The 10-member group of Americans asking whether similar payments are given to families with a parent who dies of cancer, for example. Now, the delegation will meet with Abbas 3 times before the end of their trip. Israel's security cabinet, meanwhile, taking measures of their own, approving of the deduction of nearly 600 million shekels from tax returns collected by Israel on behalf of the Palestinian Authority. This amount being equal to the salaries dished out by the PA's pay-for-slay program. Though curiously, many in the cabinet sharing serious reluctance over the move. Defense Minister Benny Gantz, Transportation Minister Michaeli, and Health Minister Horowitz all expressing concerns that withholding the funds, especially amidst an economic crisis in the PA, may be too heavy a blow for Ramallah. They further argue that a weakened PA would only serve to strengthen Hamas, which would be against Israel's ultimate security interests. A concern reportedly, by the way, in line with those of Kogat, the IDF, and the Shin Bet, especially as Israel's 2019 tax withholdings have yet to even be completed. Regardless, the measure ultimately passing after brief debate. The funding freeze in line with Israel's current standard policy. Now, in related news, the family of 19-year-old terror victim Yehuda Guetta, who was killed in a drive-by shooting 2 months ago, are now filing a civil lawsuit to seize and impound the suspected terrorist's property. And this after Israel already demolished the indicted suspect's home last week. Further, the case is filed both in Israel and the United States, as the suspect is both an American and Palestinian citizen. But joining me now with more is the Guetta family lawyer, founder and president of the Shurat Hadin Israel Law Center, attorney Nitzana Darshan-Leitner. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, what compelled the Guetta family to file a civil suit, especially in both the United States and Israel?
Look, usually there is no reason to go after the murderer. They do not have assets. They don't care about the court system. They don't care about life. There is no point to go after them. In this specific case, the murderer, the terrorist, has American citizenship, has assets in the United States, and has assets in the territories. We know that their house that was built, that Israel demolished, is on land that belongs to the terrorists. The terror victim can file a lawsuit with the Guetta family and the Peretz family, file a lawsuit to confiscate this land. In addition, they have assets in the United States, and which we are going after. We have to teach the terrorists that there is a price to Jewish blood, that they cannot pay innocent people and go without pay. In this specific case, it's not the organization, it's not the Palestinian Authority, it's not Hamas, it's specifically after the terrorists.
So what do you think makes this case most significant? What do you think about this case is most significant, and how are United States authorities cooperating?
Well, I'll tell you, quite frankly, I was shocked by the United States condemnation against the demolition of the house. I saw it as a pure hypocrisy. The United States screaming about destroying a house based on a one-person wrongdoing. It doesn't even consider the destroyment of the houses of the Peretz family, of the Guetta family, which occurred just because of one person doing. In addition, the United States is the last one to talk and condemn about violations of human rights. We all know what the United States is doing in Guantanamo Bay, of the 10,000s of prisoners that are held there without trial for years, torture that they have been gone through. The United States cannot preach Israel for violating human rights. The United States cannot preach Israel for punitive punishment. It's not. I'm sorry, against collective punishment. It's not punishment against the terrorists. Against the family of the terrorists. It's a punishment against the terrorists itself. It's a deterrence against the terrorism. There are facts that prove that house demolition is a deterrence. Cases of parents that went and told about their sons, the terrorists, to the authorities in Israel in order to block any house demolition, turn themselves in. With all due respect.
Well, so I'd like to ask, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I'd like to ask where you are in the process now. How far along are you in this suit?
So we're just filing the lawsuit. We had to gather the evidence, which are still in the military court. The trial against the terrorists did not start yet. Once it's over, we can receive the evidence. We are in the courts in Israel, in the United States, and we'll see how we go from there.
All right, Nitzana Dashan-Leitner from the Shurat Adin Israel Law Center, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, moving to Gaza, officials from Israel and the Hamas terror group are still negotiating the terms of how reconstructive aid will flow into the Strip. Israel is demanding, among other things, that the funding and aid materials be closely monitored and kept out of the hands of terror groups like Hamas. To that end, Israeli Public Security Minister Omer Bar-Lev is now proposing a new solution, a voucher system. So can this work? Here with more is Jerusalem Post and Al-Quds newspaper columnist Dr. Gershon Baskin. Dr. Baskin, thanks so much for joining us. Now, how is this policy meant to function, and will Gazans still receive any cash?
I think the point is to, as you said, to keep the cash out of the hands of Hamas or being delivered by people in Gaza to Hamas. And the basic idea is a voucher, is that people would get, or the governing authorities in Gaza would get vouchers for materials that would be delivered to Gaza, cement and steel and other building material, windows and aluminum, etc., rather than the cash themselves. And this is not something new. In fact, it was done in the West Bank years ago when there was suspicion of corruption by the Palestinian Authority. The US government, for example, through USAID, started contracting projects itself rather than delivering money to the Palestinian Authority to implement projects. There are different ways of doing this. And the point is that the reconstruction needs to happen. Almost $500 million worth of damage is estimated by the World Bank and the United Nations. People's lives need to be repaired from the damage that was done. And of course, no one wants to fund Hamas's ability to build more rockets and more tunnels and more damage. So creative means needs to be undertaken in order to enable this to happen.
So how will this system prevent Hamas from utilizing the aid, however? Couldn't they theoretically just steal the vouchers or otherwise appropriate or embezzle the aid that comes from those vouchers?
Right. I think there are lots of ways that the Hamas government can get the money that it needs, and it needs a lot less money than has been estimated. The rockets that they build are made in shops. They collect steel and other metal materials for the casing for the rockets. They use fertilizers and other chemicals. They're actually quite creative and quite cost efficient in producing rockets that they shoot at Israel, or digging tunnels using cement from Egypt and other building materials that they use from rubble. So I don't think this is really going to prevent the money from going from Hamas as long as Hamas is governing there. They're going to have access to money, and they will enlist the young people as soldiers to do the physical labor, and labor wages in Gaza are quite cheap. I think what is important for us to be looking at is that if there is going to be $500 million being pumped into Gaza, then that money should go to help the Palestinian economy itself, the private sector, small and medium family businesses should be helped with this money. The economy of the West Bank should be helped. The economies of Jordan and Egypt should be helped. They could be contracted to deliver work and to deliver supplies. And I think it would be, in general, healthy for the entire area if those economies could be supplemented through the aid which is going to come in from the international community.
All right, well, if the voucher program can sufficiently help in the rebuilding of Gaza and every other community that you just mentioned, in addition to ideally preventing the use of these dual-purpose materials for terror, I think it sounds like a win-win. Until then, Dr.
It's
Baskin.
certainly worth looking at.
Yeah. Dr. Baskin, thank you so much. In other news, Foreign Minister Yair Lapid and his team returning to Israel from Brussels after a series of high-level meetings. A lot of them are going into quarantine on Tuesday, however, after an aide on Lapid's flight home tested positive for coronavirus. Luckily for Lapid and the others who've so far tested negative, quarantine regulations have just been cut amidst a slew of overnight changes. In line with previous promises to do the maximum against coronavirus while doing the minimum to the public, Israel's COVID cabinet releasing updated regulations overnight, intending to streamline isolation procedures but still prevent a surge in infections.
במטרה להגביר את שיתוף הפעולה יחד עם הציבור ואת אמון הציבור, הקבינט החליט לאפשר למבודדים לבצע בדיקה ביום השביעי לבידוד שלהם, להמתין לתוצאה שלילית ואחרי תוצאה שלילית להשתחרר. יחד עם זה אנחנו נגביר את האכיפה על הפרות בעניין הזה, קרי אנשים שמשתחררים מבלי לבצע בדיקה, והקנס יעמוד על 5,000 שקלים.
Meanwhile, on top of shortening quarantines, the COVID cabinet deciding to emphasize the government's information campaign, including pressure to wear masks, get vaxxed, and avoid gatherings. Also, a rapid testing network will be made available to the public, and enforcement for not wearing masks will be increased, among other initiatives. Finally, with the new regulations, travel rules likewise shifting. So here's what you need to enter the country effective this Friday. 1. Prepare to take a COVID test at both ends of your travels. 2. Vaxxed or not, prepare to isolate for 24 hours in Israel upon arrival or until your negative COVID test results come back, whichever's first. 3. Unvaccinated adults without antibodies and children under 12 must isolate for at least 7 days as per the new regulations. 4. Perhaps most importantly, try to avoid traveling to any of these countries before coming to Israel. It guarantees an extended isolation, assuming you can enter at all. And finally, 5. Check for updates regularly. As we all know, the details can change at the drop of a hat. Still.
וביחד אנחנו ננצח את המגפה הזאת.
And now, this.
It is a great honor and privilege to stand here before you to officially open the Embassy of the United Arab Emirates in Tel Aviv.
Situated in the heart of the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange building, the UAE officially becoming the first Arab Gulf state to open an embassy in Israel, and its envoy hailing the bright future that lay in store with the further actualization of the Abraham Peace Accords. Deals already in the works between the two nations in the fields of economy, air travel, technology, culture, and more. And Israeli officials, for their part, likewise beaming with pride as peace spreads across the region. The nations of Sudan, Bahrain, and Morocco, among others, similarly warming with Israel.
The opening of this embassy is an important milestone in our shared journey towards a future of peace, prosperity and security for the Middle East.
Speaking of diplomacy, Israeli, American, and French foreign affairs officials are coming together over an issue of international crisis. Pro-peace Israeli activist Rudy Ruckman and his two Israeli filmmaking companions, Andrew Liebman and Edouard David Benaim, detained in Nigeria over accusations of making political contact with separatists. According to media reports, Nigerian Department of State Services, or DSS, officers arresting the three last week after they arrived in Nigeria on suspicion that they had both contacted and provided support for Biafran separatist groups. Family members of the detainees insisting, however, that the allegations are entirely without merit and that the separatists' social media accounts took advantage of the Israelis' visit. Additionally, the filmmakers previously made clear on social media that they do not take any position on the political movements nor governments that they're visiting. Rather, the trio of Israelis are filming a documentary entitled "We Were Never Lost," which explores remote Jewish communities. And to that end, they arrived in Nigeria July 6th to meet with the Nigerian Igbo Jews in the first leg of their near global tour. You can learn more at wewereneverlost.com. Moving on, another incredible archaeological discovery in the old city of Jerusalem, and curiously, the find actually settling a long-held debate. ILTV's Hannah Rifkin with the details.
Excavators with the Israel Antiquities Authority confirming that they've uncovered the eastern section of Jerusalem's outer walls. The previously thought missing section connecting to the other sections of the wall discovered decades ago, and proving beyond a doubt that the capital of Judea's perimeter was indeed protected by a single massive fortification. A fortification that met its end nearly 2,607 years ago today.
The Babylonians arrive here in 586 BC and destroy the city of Jerusalem and the first temple. Remains of this destruction were uncovered here in recent excavations of a building just inside the wall. However, they did not destroy this segment of the wall, which remains standing till today.
Meanwhile, other discoveries include a bulla inscribed with the name Tzafan, a Babylonian stamp seal, and so much more.
We found a number of storage jar handles which were stamped either with lamelech belonging to the king stamp, or with concentric circles, or with rosettas. These teach us about Judean bureaucracy, administration from sometime in the 8th century BC until the Babylonian destruction.
The findings in full will be presented by the IAA this October at the Conference for New Studies in Archaeology of Jerusalem and its region.
Speaking of the destruction of the Holy Temple, in just a few days' time on Tisha B'Av, or the 9th of the Hebrew month of Av, Jews around the world commemorate the event with a day of mourning and fasting. But actually, the 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av are also very significant. Here to explain is founder of Yad Le'olim and former Yesh Atid Knesset member, Rabbi Dov Lippman. Rabbi, as always, it's great to have you with us. Now, what is the significance of the 3 weeks before Tisha B'Av, and what are the traditions to commemorate them?
So there's actually a process that led up to the destruction of the temple. 2 temples in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount that were destroyed on the Hebrew month of Av, on the 9th of Av. And the period of time of the 3 weeks is from the time that the Babylonians or the Romans, depending on which temple, breached the walls of Jerusalem and began their process of destroying the temple. For us, this is a period of time of mourning. So you'll have, during this period of time, you will have no weddings, you will have people not cutting their hair. And as we get closer to Tisha B'Av, what we call the 9 days leading up to it, we go even further. People will not be swimming in swimming pools, and even calming the amount that we cool ourselves off, so to speak, in the showers. The idea is to be like mourners, to remember that 2,000 years ago, we had a temple in our eternal capital, Jerusalem. We are not going to forget that. And now we also, though, have to work on fixing the flaws that led to it, namely sinat chinam, hatred amongst Jews, which ultimately led to the punishment of the destruction of the temple.
Are there exceptions to this mourning period, to the rules of commemorating and marking this period?
Certainly every person has to understand for themselves what they can or can't do. And, whereas in the olden times, people would not shower or bathe at all during this period of time. In our generation, where we do so on a daily basis, the understanding is that there's basic hygiene and taking care of yourselves. What we're talking about is not listening to music, not enjoying showers, not enjoying swimming pools in a relaxing, taking care of myself type of way, because it's a period of time to feel sadness, to feel pain, leading up to the ultimate ultimate 25-hour fast of Tisha B'Av, where we do that in the ultimate sense.
All right, now Tisha B'Av is known as the saddest day in the Hebrew calendar. We know, as you mentioned, that both the first and second temple were both destroyed on Tisha B'Av. Are there other tragedies that coincide?
Actually, if you go back historically in our tradition, the entire sin of the spies, when Moses sent the spies into Israel and they came back with a negative report about the land, that happened on the 9th of Av, and the people cried then, and the response from heaven was, you're crying over something you shouldn't be crying over. This will be a time for even deeper crying. This is also understood to be the time when the end of the Bar Kokhba revolt after the destruction of the second temple came to an end as well. But I want to harp back to that first point about the spies, because that gives us two things to work on Tisha B'Av. One is hatred amongst one another. Let's learn to be tolerant, coexistent, respect one another, try to fix that flaw, which led to temple destruction, but also a love for Israel. If there was a lack of love for Israel, which led to the sin of the spies, and that led to our crying, during this time period, we can try to strengthen our love and our support for Israel as a way to rectify that flaw from thousands of years ago.
All right, well, certainly a message that we can learn from today, especially after the couple of years that we've had. Rabbi Lippman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, our final topic tonight. The Israeli cosmetics brand SR Cosmetics has now launched a new application that has combined the world of modern mobile technology and the field of cosmetics. Emmanuel Kadosh, of course, is here to break things down for us. Emmanuel, thank you so much for being with us. Now, can you tell us a little bit about this new app?
Hey, Aaron, so it's actually a really simple idea that, now that I think about it, it's crazy that no one's done it before. The new Face It app basically takes away the need to physically go into your cosmetologist's office in order to learn more about your skin and figure out the products that best suit you. You download the Face It app in the App Store, which uses an AI system, and then you take pictures of your skin clean of makeup and, of course, in good lighting from a front and side angle, and then upload it to the app. The app then analyzes your picture and will give you kind of like a breakdown of your skin, whether you have mild acne, eczema, wrinkles, scars, pigmentations, or, if you're lucky, you just have generally healthy skin.
All right, well, this actually does sound like a very cool app. I mean, especially in the time of COVID, when you don't necessarily want or can physically go into your cosmetologist's office, but you're still looking to learn more about your skin. So what is the next step?
So from there, it will give you a list of SR Cosmetics products that are recommended for your skin type, whether it be a toner, a face mask, or a serum, for example. It'll give you instructions on which product to use first and when in the day it's recommended, and then you will be able to directly purchase that skincare products that you want, if it's on the website, directly through the app. The app is completely changing the world of skincare, allowing you to access this insane technology from the comfort of your own home with high-quality products. Now, it's important to mention that the pictures that you take on the app for the technology to assess are not shared or used publicly. Privacy is so important to SR Cosmetics.
All right, well, it's actually great that you mentioned that. That was something that was a concern of mine, and it's good to know that these pictures will not be used, that they are kept private. Again, that was something that first popped into my head when we started talking about this app. But what I want to know is, if you are a cosmetologist yourself then, can you also use this app?
Actually, that's a really great question. This app is meant for two different types of users. The regular person like me, who just needs some advice on their skin and good products to use. And then there's the cosmetologist side, which are welcome to use this app as well. So if you work in the field of cosmetology, you are granted access to better priced products, more in-depth analysis of the treatments to do with specific products that they recommend, and you are able to save the pictures of your clients in order to see the progress that you've made with their skin. It's overall such a user-friendly app and can only benefit those that are interested in improving their skin at home. So everyone that's interested in using this revolutionary app can find it in the App Store right now under the Face It app. I already have mine downloaded.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much again, Emmanuel, for breaking this down for us.
Thanks, Aaron.
That is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.28 shekels to the American dollar and 2.62 shekels to the Canadian dollar. And finally, for the latest updates and news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as to our newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Aaron Porras. Be well. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.